Hi, my name is Jake Leiden, and this is my contemporary business leader presentation on Russ Torres, president of Kimberly-Clark for North America. Description of leader. Russ Torres is my friend from childhood, Sean Torres' father. Russ is the standing president for Kimberly-Clark, North America. Kimberly-Clark is an American-based multinational consumer goods company with most of its products being paper-based, diapers, Kleenex, etc. Currently employ 15,000 employees across multiple nations and are included in the Fortune 500. They're founded in 1872 in Neenah, Wisconsin, and have a deep Midwest heart and culture. Russ was an outside hire to be the president of Kimberly-Clark Professional in March of 2020. That's a kind of side company that does professional solutions using Kimberly-Clark products. He was there for about a year and a half before being moved to become the president of North America for the general business. Leadership theory for Russ. After my conversation with him, I would say he most subscribes to transformational leadership. So we'll look at later. He told me my greatest achievement is the changes to organizational culture that we are making at Kimberly-Clark right now. So pushing the right levers to guide people to be passionate is something he's passionate about. It's especially using idealized influence as he holds himself to an incredible standard of work ethic and output. They're also doing a lot of focus on inspirational culture and intellectual stimulation as they're looking to return the culture back to the entrepreneurial roots of the 90s. Additionally, they have what they call a culture of care, which fits in an individualized consideration. Russ is all about establishing culture and leadership at this part of his career. His greatest career accomplishment. We talked about this, and it really felt like Russ believes he's at his peak in his career right now, with the things that he's currently doing being the most impactful in his life. He said that the development of the culture at KMB, it's taking place as we speak of, is what he's most proud of. He taught me a lot about the career stages in life. He said early on, learning a lot and being exposed to a lot is essential. In the middle, working really hard, and in the late stages, leading others and guiding well. He's now in a stage in his career where the culmination of what he learned is being put on display into practice, and this makes the lessons in selflessness and authenticity that he learned earlier all the more necessary. He leans into the ideologies of servant leadership, but from what I could understand, more so from a utilitarian place than a Christ-like one. It really appears like it is the ethics that him and the company believe is what does well, rather than like a Christian route. I ranked him highly in the elements of servant leadership on his career accomplishment, giving him a score of 40 out of 50 on an average score of 4 out of 5 across the 5 categories. The ones that he got a 5 out of 5 on were listening, conceptualization, foresight, stewardship, commitment to communal growth, and building community. Empathy, healing, awareness, and persuasion are all places where I ranked Russ a bit lower. He's capable of them, and he's emotionally intelligent and has invested in them heavily. But based on what he was telling me, the direction that Kimberly-Clark is going in, they're not being emphasized as much because it's kind of the culture that the company already has. So they're working on really turning it a different direction. But something that Russ and I talked a lot about was grit and persistence. He told me several stories of developing a greater work ethic and capacity to outwork others throughout his career. He didn't address these stories as what was the biggest challenge in his career. He actually talked about changing company cultures. But because of the sake of differentiation, I want to share the stories he shared with me: college and consulting work ethic. So when he was in college, he went to Dartmouth University, an Ivy League school where he played football there. And he told me that he would go to the library on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. So 16 hours he would study. And I was like, and I've never met anybody that does that. Additionally, he started his career with Bain Consulting Group, which is a really proficient, just high status consulting group where he talked about having to work 48 hours straight there. And I was like, oh my gosh. And how other people would be crying and breaking down, but he had the grit to work through it. The willingness to work hard and go the extra mile created Russ into a great leader rather than simply a manager. He is someone who can inspire and who people will follow naturally as they look up to who he is as a person. I ranked him a 36 out of 50 in servant leadership in his earlier career. In that stage, there were certain things that Russ wasn't required to do, like build community. There are other things that were difficult in this stage, such as healing or empathy. He did do incredibly in listening, persuasion, conceptualization, foresight, and stewardship, making him a great servant leader. This stage, while it isn't something that I would like to go through myself, catapulted Russ from what I could tell into a hardened worker that could take that ethic and be a great leader of people later on. And he carries that truly with a humility. He's not boastful in it. As a leader and manager, Russell uses all five power bases to develop and motivate his employees. In the challenge at Bain Consulting, it was expert power as he continued to press on in hard times of extreme work hours. He had a work ethic that had been developing over time. And so that was his expertise, was how hard he could work compared to other people. With his background at Bain Consulting for 10 plus years, his Kellogg MBA, which is the business school at Northwestern, and other backgrounds, Russ has a great amount of referent power that leads others to desire his leadership and input. He's received legitimate power in his career increasingly due to his continued self-pursuit for referent and expert power, not necessarily the power element, but he has hungered for learning, hungered for experience, hungered for growth. So that has grown him. He told me, if you continue to try to figure out what the next problem coming is going to be, you can get more done and continually expand your responsibility levels. So going above and beyond what people are saying, what people are thinking. Leader comparison, Steve Jobs. Well, Steve Jobs produced consumer technology and Russ Torres produces consumer staples. They both have focus on entrepreneurship and innovation within their historically innovative companies, and they both focus on the consumer and the consumer process a lot. And they're more similar than you'd think, not necessarily all the personal ways. We'll talk about that here. But the company posture and the cultures they're looking to develop have some serious similarities. Steve Jobs, he had an obsessive focus on A players, belittling anyone who was not a high performer. Russ, on the other hand, mentioned a desire for a culture of A players, but focused on building it, and he had a much greater propensity for compassion. That's also much more built into Kimberly Clark than what Steve Jobs had in Apple. Steve Jobs was a transformational leader that people went to follow because of what he had done and who he is. Russ is as well, to a lesser extent than Jobs. People want to follow because of what he's done and who he is. He's not Steve Jobs. He didn't create something as amazing, but he's very respected. And it was the same case with Jobs, where Jobs was greatly admired. And I think Russ is as well to a lesser degree, but Jobs was practically worshipped, and people really wanted to work under him. Jobs demonstrated some Machiavellianism traits, low self-awareness with an extreme self-efficacy and high locus of control, where Russ, on the other hand, very empathetic, has a high self-awareness and an extreme self-efficacy, as he showed me, with a high locus of control. So Russ was much more of a traditional great manager with a great work ethic, whereas Jobs was a traditionally terrible manager with a great work ethic. Jobs is an extreme visionary. He's quoted as saying, "People don't know what they want until they see it." And Russ is a man who's looking to develop an entrepreneurial spirit within the culture at Kimberly Clark. Leadership lessons and takeaways from Russ. In connecting the mission, vision, and strategy of Kimberly Clark with an entrepreneurship mindset, Russ said something really interesting. He said, Kimberly Clark has a genuine culture of care. Many of its employees are working in the same town for the same company their parents and grandparents worked for. Told me where he wants to make a change is returning it to a state of competition with other companies and innovative creativity while maintaining its family culture and honor. Something that Russ taught me about is that 5 of the 7 main categories that Kimberly Clark competes in, it created in the 80s and 90s. Things like diapers, things like Kleenex, I believe. Taught me to have a focus on learning and growing in my life and career, and to be proactive in those areas of my life, looking for opportunities and threats that are coming on rather than letting them come and hit you and dealing with it responsibly. Taught me to treat everything as if it's in my control, and I'll have a greater ability to succeed when challenges come up. He also taught me to be ruthless in my organization and planning both short term and long. So both of those two things, he said, that's important for your individual life and for businesses. You know, if you're leading a business or helping to lead a business. Reflections. Why did I choose to interview Russ Torres, and why did I choose to compare him to Steve Jobs? Chose to interview Russ because he's my friend's dad and because he's done a lot and really climbed a corporate ladder. What challenges did I face in interviewing him? I wanted to learn from him, and I only had so much time to do so. But it was really good. He told me a lot of awesome stuff. I chose Jobs because I've read a biography on him, and he's a tantalizing leader. A lot to observe. Follow-up questions that I asked him in order to arrive at the responses. I asked him, what is something that I should be asking you about? If you were in my shoes, what should I ask you? He just started listing off work ethic stuff and stuff about destroying immediate gratification and developing a culture in yourself of prolonged gratification. And the process with respect to being an effective leader, he taught me a lot about building a culture and just thinking about the weight of, loving people, and on the other hand, hard work. And just that people want to look up to a leader that's worthy of being looked up to. So I really learned that from him. And yeah, here's my list of references, including pictures from this slide. So thank you so much.